Hi and welcome or welcome back to The Books Are Everywhere. So today it is time for my February wrap up. I read 12 books in February, which is one book improvement on January, which I'm happy about considering the month is shorter and I probably would have read another book if I had the extra couple of days, or at least finished another book. So I'm pretty happy with 12. It's not as many as I'd like, but I'm still happy with it, and I think 12 is quite good considering the length of the month and the length of some of the books that I read in February as well. So let's dive right in with what I read in February. So the first book I read was Twin Crowns, and this is by Catherine Webber and Catherine Doyle, and I really enjoyed this. It comes out in May, it comes out on the 12th of May, and this is a very advanced proof copy I had that is utterly gorgeous and I love it, and I feel so honoured to have been sent this so early. So this one follows two sisters, Wren and Rose, and Wren was stolen from the palace at birth and she was brought up by witches, whereas Rose was brought up within the palace and trained to be a princess. And I think Rose was not aware of Wren's kind of existence as her sister at all, whereas Wren did know that Rose existed and she was living in the palace. And this one follows them kind of like switching lives, and I just found it really interesting. As I went into the story, I felt like I wouldn't really like Rose and she'd come across a bit of a bitch because she was brought up to be this kind of princess, and in some ways she was, but I also really liked her kind of vulnerability that was shown in here, and I just thought this was really good. I really liked the plot. I ended up really liking both of the sisters pretty much equally. My only slight complaint is the end felt quite rushed at points, but I really liked the plot overall. It was super easy to read and I gave it 4.5 stars. And I also read Vicious and Vengeful by V. Schwab. I'm going to talk about these kind of separately and kind of together, but I did read them both in the month of February. I read this one first and then a couple weeks later I finished Vengeful. But anyway, Vicious was my first 5-star book of the year. I have really been struggling to rate books 5-star this year for some reason. I'm just finding like slight nitpicks with them that make them not 5 stars, but I actually had 3 5-star reads in February, which is pretty good considering that is a quarter of the books I actually read in the month, and there was a lot that was 4.5 as well. And this one was really enjoyable. This series follows Eli and Victor, and they were at college together 10 years ago. They were college roommates, and Eli decides he's going to do his kind of doctorate, PhD. I can't remember like what kind of thing he's doing. Thesis. He's doing a thesis. He decides to do his thesis on these people called extraordinaries at extraordinaries, which mean they can like develop superhero traits or superhero like powers when they have a near-death experience. And then he also realises that there is a way to actually create that in yourself if you have a near-death experience. So him and Victor both become extraordinaries, and then it follows them 10 years later as they are basically sworn enemies. And this was just so good. I loved the morally grey characters, I loved the side characters which were so soft and so lovely to read about. And the plot was just amazing as well, kept me on my toes. I loved the audiobook of this book as well, and both of the books really, they were just so good. So I gave this one 5 stars, I gave Vengeful 4.5 stars just because I didn't have quite the same feeling with it as I did with Vicious, but I did enjoy them both so much, so they were both very close, but this one was 5 stars and I just absolutely loved it. So this is definitely one of my favourite series now. Although this is slightly out of order of when I read them in the month of February, I'm going to just talk about Extraordinary by V. Schwab because it is part of the villain series that includes Vicious and Vengeful, but this one is a graphic novel that is set within the world of the villain series, and this one I wanted to talk about while I just finished talking about the novels, but this one kind of like missed the mark for me. This one follows Charlotte, who awakens from a bus crash with extraordinary powers and she doesn't really know what's going on, and she basically gets involved in the lives of Eli from the villain series, and I'm not going to say much more because it does give a little bit of spoiler for the original series. However, I don't know, this one just really missed the mark for me. I gave it 3.5 stars in the end, and it was great to be within this world, and it was cool to see it as a graphic novel, but there was something in this book that just really didn't hit the spot. And that is the fact that like I wanted this story to be one of the side characters that I loved so much from Vicious and Vengeful, and I thought it would be one of their kind of like origin stories. And when it wasn't that, I think obviously I was a little bit disappointed, but that's nothing to do with the book, that's what I was putting onto the book. But what disappointed me is there was these two characters who basically approximate Victor and Mitch, and they have like the same characters and the same traits, and the one who I think is called Felix feels like Victor to me, even has some of the same like lines as Victor does in the novels. And I just found it really, really odd to read about, because I was reading about it like, is this Victor and Mitch from the novels, or is it like random people? And it was just like random people, but they had the same like thoughts and feelings and personalities and traits, and it was just so odd. I don't know why. It just completely missed the mark for me in that respect. But Mark also read this, and there will probably be a video including both of us talking in depth about this at some point, to kind of like compare our experiences. He read this in the comic format, because this one did come out as actual comics before this graphic novel came out, and this is a bind-up of those comics. And he really, really enjoyed it, and I think having the experience of reading it without having any of the real backstory of Vicious and Vengeful is completely different. And I also think if I had left this a while before I read it, I would have probably enjoyed it a lot more. So it's probably a bit on my part as well. I think this is definitely intended for people who are really missing the series and want to have the same kind of feeling they did when they read it and get back to that story or that world. But it did miss the mark for me reading it directly after the novels. Okay, kind of back to the order that I was reading things in February, and next is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. A lot of these books I actually read for a vlog that will be coming out, which is me reading the books Mark gave me for Christmas. If you remember, we did a video together where he wrapped 5 books for me and I unwrapped them on camera, and I've been getting through those books and I've been vlogging the experience as well, so you will see those at some point in a vlog. But I read this one and a lot of the other books I will be mentioning in this video for that reason and as part of that vlog. And this one was the first one that I picked up. This one is one Mark gave to me because he said this book has sat with him for a very long time. He read it quite a while ago, and I think at least 10-15 years ago he read this. And he said this is a book that's like stayed with him since then. He wouldn't necessarily say he enjoyed reading it or he really liked it, but it's a book that has stayed with him, and for that reason he wanted me to read it as well. And I definitely have the same feeling, as this will be a book that will stay with me for a very long time. It made me think and feel a lot, but it did also kind of miss the mark. And I realise I haven't really told you what this is about, but it follows Fermina and Florentino, and Fermina rebuffed the hopeless romantic Florentino's advances and married somebody else, and it follows them throughout their lives, mainly Florentino, as he then, after that kind of happened and he's not with Fermina and he wants to be with Fermina, and he ends up just being with lots of different women throughout his life, most of them just being casual kind of one-night stand type things and just casual relationships that are more about sex than about anything else. But it basically follows them throughout their lives up until the time when Fermina's husband gets killed, and much later on in their lives, and Florentino then tries to go after her again after 51 years, 9 months and 4 days. And I really like the idea of this. I love that it shows them throughout their lives, but Florentino was just such a problematic character for me. I couldn't like him in the way that I feel like I needed to actually enjoy this book. He does some quite problematic things with younger girls and talks about younger girls in a problematic way and kind of stalks Fermina a bit, and there was just some really problematic language used in here that I just feel like if I'd have been able to have liked him, I would have enjoyed this book a lot more. And because it doesn't really talk about any of the other characters in depth, I felt like I couldn't root for other people either, so it was a bit of a hit and miss for me. I loved the writing so much, it was absolutely beautiful, but there was just a few things in there that really let it down, and for that reason I gave it 3 stars. I then read Pride and Prejudice, a retelling by Laura Wood, and this is a retelling of the classic Pride and Prejudice book by Jane Austen, and this is a straight retelling of that book. It includes exactly the same characters, exactly the same plot, the names haven't been changed or anything, but this has been made into a short, dyslexia-friendly version of the original story, and this was so good. Me and Alex read this on a live stream just before Valentine's Day. We read it on the 13th of February, and it was just so well done. I just really admire how Laura Wood managed to break down the points of the original story into this 120-ish page, 30-ish page book. And this book is published by Barrington Stoke, who are a dyslexia-friendly publisher. I've read Lauren James's books that are published by them, The Starlight Watchmaker and The Deep Sea Duke, and really enjoyed them. And there is actually a few books in this kind of series of retellings which I definitely would like to read at some point as well. There's Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, and I think there might be another one as well that I can't remember. But this one was just so good. We read Laura Wood's book A Sky Painted Gold last year and really loved it, so when we saw that this was coming out, and me and Alex actually buddy read Pride and Prejudice last year, we really wanted to pick it up, and it was really well done. So the publisher Barrington Stoke published only dyslexia friendly books, which is amazing, and they are all of these short books that are published with this same kind of font in it, which is easier to read. The pages are kind of off-white yellow, and the pages are really thick, so it means that you can't read the text that's on the back of the pages very easily, and it's very accessible. Really love them as a publisher and what they do, and this was just very well done. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think for anyone of any age who wants a simplified version of this book, or just like a quick version of this book without reading the original story, I think you would just go to this because it is perfect for that reason. And I gave this 4.5 stars if I didn't say already. And next I picked up Gallant by V. Schwab, so this was my fourth V. Schwab book of the month. This one comes out on the 8th of March now. It's just been pushed back a week in the UK. I think it's already out in the US if you'd like to pick this one up. And this one was so good. It's her latest release. This was very kindly sent to me by Titan, so thank you so much to Titan for sending me a copy. If you don't know, which you probably do, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is my favourite book of all time, so of course I was dying to read this and I picked it up as soon as it came through my door. I was very happy and honoured to receive a copy of this, and it follows Olivia Pryor, who is a 16-year-old girl, and she is missing her mother and father, who have both died. She's been left as an orphan at an orphanage, and the only thing she has left of them is this journal of her mother's, and then she gets a letter that's inviting her to Gallant, which is her uncle's estate and her uncle's house, but the journal of her mother's is actually warning her against going to Gallant. But she goes anyway, only to find that her uncle is actually dead and that the house is only run by servants. And along the back of this house there is this wall in the garden that she's told that she can't go through. It's dangerous beyond the wall, but she's being called beyond that wall, and it kind of follows the story from there. It's a bit of a mystery. Love the journal elements of this. Her mother's journal is kind of shown throughout the book like this, which I really enjoyed. It's also full of absolutely gorgeous illustrations, which I was also sent print versions of as well, and they are really beautiful, and I just really enjoyed this. I loved it. It is not beating Addie LaRue. Addie LaRue is still my favourite Schwab book, and I did rate it 4.5 out of 5 stars, but I still enjoyed so much about it. It was really enjoyable to read. I love the mystery aspect, very quick to read as well, and just so interesting all round. I just wanted a little bit more in terms of it being longer and a little bit more in terms of like emotional connection to the characters, but I'm still rating it 4.5 stars and I loved it. I then picked up Act Cool by Tobley McSmith. This was just one I needed an audiobook for. Like, I just needed an audiobook to read in the last week of the month, and I had this one on my TBR that was also available as an audiobook on Scribd. So I picked this one up. This one was sent to me a while ago by Harper 360, so thank you to them. I really enjoyed this book. It follows August Green, who is an aspiring actor. He has managed to get a spot in SPA, which is the School of Performing Arts in New York, and he is moved there to live with his aunt after his parents basically kicked him out, or he ran away from his parents' house because he is trans and they're struggling with accepting that, so he runs away from home, lives with his aunt in New York and joins the School of Performing Arts. And this is basically an exploration of his identity and him finding out who he is, and he's also kind of learning how to show that to the world, I guess. But I really, really enjoyed this one. It had so many important discussions about being trans and growing up in a world that's kind of not accepting of that and in a family that's not accepting of that. And it was just really, really good. I honestly enjoyed this a lot more than I expected to. I felt this would be a bit mediocre, but Harper 360 always just blows me out of the water. I've read so many books by them that I thought, like, I don't read that much YA contemporary anymore. This could be a little bit samey for me. And let me down a bit, and then they just blow me away and I just end up really loving them. And that was one of these books. And this was one of those books. I really want to read Stay Gold, which is also by this author, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. It was just so good to read. I felt the ending, it was a little bit against what the book had been kind of talking about, and I talk a bit more about that in my vlog where I read this one as well. But it was just a little bit like the whole way through this book, the main character August had been saying about how trans people should have happy stories and happy endings, and then this book kind of went against that a little bit, and it just felt a little bit odd, that kind of like switch, but I still really enjoyed it. It had some really important messages. So yeah, I'm giving this one 4.5 stars. I then picked up Coraline by Neil Gaiman. This was again for the book Smart got me for Christmas, and I really enjoyed this one. It follows Coraline, a girl who moves into this new house with her family, and there's this door at the back of the kind of drawing room, sitting room type room, that goes to nowhere. And so it used to be one house and it was separated into two, so the door doesn't go to anywhere, it's just bricked up. And then one day Coraline opens the door, is called kind of through the door, and is going into this and makes her way into this kind of alternate universe, where her parents are there, but they're kind of like dolls and they're quite creepy and they have button eyes and they want her to stay, and it is very, very strange, very creepy. I read it in a day. It is a middle grade, I would say it's a middle grade book. I think a lot of people think of it as a young adult book because it does have some darker themes, but I would say it's more of a middle grade feel to me. But it's very sinister, very creepy, but very imaginative as always with Neil Gaiman, and this is the second book that I've read by him and I really enjoyed it, so I definitely want to read more by him. I'd like to read more of his adult books, but I feel like they all have this kind of middle grade whimsical feel to them. I do not like dolls, so I was a bit hesitant going into this. They are one of my things that like really creep me out, and I don't think I'm going to watch the adaptation of this at all. But I really liked the book, so I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. And then I picked up the manga 5 centimeters per second by Makoto Shinkai, and I loved this. Again, this is one of the books Mark bought me for Christmas, and this was just so good. I really wanted to read this one as a manga before watching the film because I've read the Your Name and Weathering With You manga after watching the film, and I just wanted a different experience. I wanted to see it from the other way around, and I really loved this. I gave it 5 stars. It is very, very Makoto Shinkai. It feels like his writing is just this very absorbing discussions about love and about life, and I honestly can't say that this book is about any more than that. It is just about love and about growing up having a crush, and then kind of how that follows throughout your life. I don't think it's about much more than just a love story, but it's so beautifully told. It made me emotional within the first like 150 pages. I was crying, and that's a manga. Like if a manga can do that, because I don't read a lot of manga, and I feel like I had this such like deep connection to it. I don't know. I just really loved it. I'm very excited to watch the film. I thought this was done really well, and I'm very glad that I read it. So this was my second 5 star of the month. And then on to my third and final 5 star of the month, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This one I have never read. It's a very short book. It's 106 pages, I think. And it basically follows these two people, I think they're in the 1930s, and it's following George and his friend Lenny, who I would say has learning difficulties if we were going to put a kind of modern label on it, but it's very hard to kind of describe that. As they go through California on the hunt for work, and it's just a very, very sad story. I felt this book was so emotionally weighted and very heavy, but it was just so, so well written. It felt like such a honest portrayal of their story. This one is actually also based on a true story that I think was something that Steinbeck witnessed when he was doing this kind of farmhand labour, but I found this one to be just really, really beautifully handled, really beautifully written, but really sad as well. And I just can't explain it why I love John Steinbeck's writing so much, but I've read this and East of Eden, and I felt the same way with both of the books, so they both make me quite emotional, and I get quite emotional talking about them, and I'm really glad that Mark bought me this one because I feel like it's been so long since I read East of Eden. I don't know if I'd necessarily have picked this one up myself, but I ended up really, really loving it, so I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. And last but not least, I read Crossfire by Mallory Blackman, which I haven't even rated yet because I literally just finished it late last night, but I really enjoyed this one actually. This is the 5th book in the Noughts and Crosses series, and this was another one that Mark bought me for Christmas. I wasn't necessarily going to carry on with this series, but there is only one more after this book, which I will also be reading, which is Endgame, and I think that is definitely the end of the series, unless she just does another random dive into this world at some point like she has with these. And it's been a while since I read the first 4 books, so I wasn't sure how I'd feel about this one, but honestly, I quite enjoyed it. It was really, really fast-paced and very entertaining. I really couldn't put it down. I read like at least 300 pages of this in a day. I just carried on reading it because the chapters are on average quite short as well. So this one follows a lot of the characters from the other books, the earlier books in this series. It does follow Sephi from the first book and the first couple of books as she's much, much older, and it also follows Callie, her daughter, and her other son. I don't know how much I'm spoiling, but this series has been around for so, so long. But basically it follows some of the characters from all of the other books, and they kind of come together and they all have different points of view in this book. I have always found with Mallory Blackman's books in this series that sometimes they're from different points of view and I enjoy one more than the other, and some of them are really hit and miss. But this one felt quite evenly matched. I was really invested in all of their stories and I wanted to see where all of their stories went, and it was just very entertaining. Also ended on a cliffhanger, so I definitely want to pick up the next book to see how this all plays out, and I'm sure it'll be a very quick read as well. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. I think I'm going to give it 3.5 or 4 stars. It is very much in the middle of 3.5 and 4 stars, I would say. Probably 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It is not amazing, and I feel like these books, as they've gone on, have gotten, well, I felt that with the original kind of 4 books, that some of them got quite samey and I wasn't as invested in the story, whereas this one I definitely was more invested in the characters and the story. But it didn't like blow me away in terms of it being like a 5 star, but I will say it was probably, yeah, 4 star. Let's give it a 4 stars. Okay, that was all of the 12 books that I read in February. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me for the ride when I've read these 12 books, and hopefully I have another good reading month in March. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!